Okay, so let's see if we can do a demonstration involving a NAT gateway. So you can see here I've got the CLI set up, and we might start by doing the describe-subnets command. So I don't really need to, you can see here that I don't need to provide anything for it, so let's give it a go. AWS EC2 describe-subnets. Let's take a look at that. So we've got one in EU West 2B. Okay, so it's in this availability zone. And we've got an availability zone ID, which is something like EU W2AZ3. It's got its own seeder block, which is 172.31.32.0/20. And it's associated with this VPC, VPC05F, okay? We've got a second seeder block here, which is 172.31.16.0. So this seeder block is different. It's 172.31.16.0 as opposed to 172.31.32. And this is in EU West 2A as opposed to EU West 2B. Okay, and we've got a third subnet down here. Now, are they all part of the same VPC? Well, this one is VPC05F, VPC05F, and VPC05F. So yeah, if I just look at that VPC ID key, I can see that they're all part of the same network. Now, are these VPCs public VPCs or private VPCs? Well, I have not added an internet gateway to any of them, so they must be private. So what's the next task? Well, let's suppose I want to launch an EC2 instance into one of the subnets. So I'm going to use the run instances command. And let's just see what parameters we can provide with this. Now, you can see that everything's optional. It's very minimalist. You can just do run instances, provide nothing, and it may just launch an instance. You could provide just an image ID and an instance type, and you're off. But you can provide a subnet ID. So if we were to pick let's go with the first subnet. So each subnet is in a different AZ, that's good. So let's copy this subnet ID. I'm going to paste that in my clipboard. Okay. And now what I'm going to do is sketch out sketch out a new command. So it's going to be AWS EC2, see that, and then run instances, but then I'm going to provide a subnet ID, and there I'm going to put in the parameters. That's one parameter sort of within the run instances command. Is there anything else that I care about with that command? I mean, I probably do want it to be, I shouldn't click on that taskbar, I probably do want it to be a particular instance type, don't I? So if we go back to sketch it out, so I probably will put instance-type, and I'm going to provide a value for that. But what value should I provide? Probably t3.micro. And I've also got an image that I've prepared elsewhere, so dash dash image ID, and it's going to be AMI dash 012 A45 249 BA F8 77BD. Okay, so 877BD at the end, yep. 9BAF 877BD. And that should work. So I've got it. I've got an instance in the right subnet, and I'll get, or in one of the subnets, and I should get some information on that. Let's go. Let's get that moving. So I'm putting an EC2 instance in one of the subnets. And remember, there we go. So it's come back and it said we've got an Amazon Machine Image Launch Index. We've got that image ID, and we've now got an instance ID. So I'm going to copy that to my notepad. Okay. Now I want to use another of my EC2 instances to make another of my subnets rather to make a public subnet. So here we have subnet 090, which is in EU West 2A. So because it's A, I'm going to use it for my public subnet. So remember, I used subnet 02C to put my EC2 instances in, and I'm going to use 090 to put my internet gateway in. So now so I'm going to just document this subnet for internet gateway. Just like that. So the question is, how do I go about this? How do I attach an internet gateway to a subnet? So I'm doing Control F internet, And you can see we've got this command here called attach internet gateway. Well, that looks pretty sensible. We can see that there are some parameters that you do need to provide. You need to provide the internet gateway ID and the VPC ID. Okay, so that tells me I need to already have an internet gateway ID. So there must be some other command which allows you to create an internet gateway. So I type internet, we've got attach internet gateway, but we do also have this command which is create internet gateway, so that must be the one I want to use. And there's nothing that's required for it. You don't have to provide anything. You can optionally provide some tag specifications, you can optionally do a dry run, you can optionally do --CLI input JSON. You know, you can optionally do generate. Okay, so let's try it. I'm going to do Control-C to escape that command. AWS EC2 create internet gateway. Right, so we're not attaching it yet, but hopefully this just brings an internet gateway into existence somewhere. And it's come back with a response which indicates that it worked. Internet gateway, I know it's tedious, but I do like to just take a minute to just diffuse what's in front of us. So internet gateway, opening brace, closing brace. So we've got, it's all an object, and we've got these key and a value and then a comma, key and a value and then a comma and then a third one and then a fourth one. So we've got attachments, internet gateway ID, owner ID and tags. Now the most important thing is probably the internet gateway ID, so I'm going to Control-C, copy that, and I'm going to paste that on my clipboard. So we've now got a subnet for my internet gateway and an internet gateway ID. So now I can think about using that command which was about Control-F, internet. I can now think about using this attach internet gateway command. So I might just copy that and go to Notepad and use that to work from. So if I paste that, you can see we've got that command written out for me. We can leave dry run in. Let's do that. Let's see how that works. --dry run. I'm going to remove all these line returns. Internet gateway ID. Well, I'm going to paste in value. It also asks for a VPC ID. Can I not attach it to a particular subnet? No. Aha. Okay. Remember, you attach. Yes, you attach. That's right. It's really important. You don't attach internet gateways to a subnet. You don't put them in a subnet. You put them in the wall of the VPC. So if I go back to when I listed the free subnets, so here subnets, we said they were all for the same VPC. So I need that VPC ID now. VPC 05F 3F. So I'm going to copy that VPC ID. Back here now, paste the VPC ID, and I can use that copy in my create internet gateway command. --CLI input JSON, --CLI input YAML. Don't really need those. But now I've got a command that I could use. Oh, and we need to add AWS EC2 in front. So AWS EC2 attach internet gateway --dry run. We'll give that a go. I think it means it's going to run the command, but not really. --, internet gateway ID and a VPC ID. So let's give that command a go. Okay. An error occurred, dry run operation, when calling the attach internet gateway operation. The request would have succeeded, but the dry run flag is set. So that might be helpful to know. You might be interested in whether a command would succeed without actually wanting to thereby do it. But in this case, we do want to do it, so I'm going to remove that. But that's how that works. So I'm going to now remove --dry run, and let's copy the new updated command and execute. Okay, an error occurred, and it's telling us that the network VPC05F already has an internet gateway attached. So that's quite interesting. How would I work out if there's an internet gateway attached? Well, there must be some sort of describe VPC command. So I'll do control describe VPC attribute, describe VPC. We've got describe VPCs. So we've got two VPCs. One of them is the one we've been working with. The subnets that we looked at were in this VPC 05F, and it says is default true. So it is default. There's nothing here that tells us there's an internet gateway attached to it, I don't think. It says the CEDAR block is 172, and like a good 70, 310016. It says we've got a DHCP options ID, the state of it is available, it's 05F again. We've got an owner ID, that's an account ID, instance tenancy default, CEDAR block association set. We have something called a CEDAR block association set, and it's default, but it doesn't tell us that there's an internet gateway attached. Maybe they do attach internet gateways to your default. Maybe your default VPC is such that it has an internet gateway attached, but we do have another VPC here because it says is default false, which is VPC 0B7. Right, what we need to do is then, it's all about roots. Roots are what make subnets public or private. So, oops, shouldn't be clicking on that taskbar. So, what command do I use to sort of add a root to my public subnet so that it's got a route to the internet gateway? So I've said subnet for internet gateway, but let's call it public subnet because this is still going to work. So I still want subnet 090 to be my public subnet. So let's have a think. We've got disable transit gateway route table propagation. Not quite right. Disable VGW route propagation. Okay, there's 46 commands of routing I can see. So let's go to the top. Click, click, click. We've got associate route table. Maybe I want to look at the routes first. Associate transit gateway route table. Create local gateway route. Create local gateway route table. Create local gateway route table virtual interface group association. Create local gateway route table. Create route. That's nice. Create route. Create route table. Maybe there are some that, again, let me look at it. We've got delete, 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 delete. Delete route table. Delete transit gateway route. Delete transit gateway route table. Describe client VPN routes better. Describe local, but is there just describe routes? There we go, describe route tables. So that's more like it. So let's try that. I can see that I don't need to provide any parameters for it, so I'm going to go AWSEC2 describe route tables and get this big command back. Okay, so it says route tables, associations, and then we have square brackets, which means it's here is one array. Main true, root table association ID, RTB ASSOC-09C. The root table ID is root table 021. Remember, there's one root table for every subnet. So 0-021 feb, propagating VGWS, propagating what's VGWS? Variable VPC gateway subnet, root table ID, RTB-021 feb 11, which is the same as up here, 021 feb 11. And then roots, and we've made this an array, so an ordered list with opening square bracket and closing square bracket. And we have the first object, the first element in the array, which is this object, and the second element in the array, which is this object. Destination seeder block, gateway ID, local, origin, create root table, state, active. So both of these roots have what about target? When we talk about root tables, we usually say there's a destination column and a target column. So what's going on here? Where's my target? Maybe they just call target gateway ID, because we've got gateway ID local for this route, and here we have gateway ID, and then we have the IGW, and the destination seeder block is 0, 0, all zeros. So we've got all zeros going to the internet gateway, and we've got 172.31 going to the local. So that's what they put for the target, the tangible target. They just put gateway ID in the CLI. And it says origin. Perhaps that's the origin. So the operation that resulted in it. So in other words, someone did create root table, and that's why we have this. Someone did this create root table command, and that's why we have this local root with the gateway being local. And someone did create root and created this root, which is all zeros going to the internet gateway. Perhaps that's what it is. So that's the roots key. We've talked about the value of that. The next key is the tags key. Tags, colon, and then VPC ID 05F. So these roots, this root table is part of a subnet that's part of VPC 05F, and the owner ID is that's an account ID, a 12-digit number. And then we close that object. So opening brace here, closing brace here. So this is all one object. So the information about whether it's main or not, whether the root table is a main root table. We have a root table association ID and a root table ID. And then we have another root table, main true. This is again a main root table. You know what I'm wondering? Why is there no mention of subnets? I thought there was a root table for a subnet, and yet we're not told what subnet the root table is attached to. Main true. This one's different. This is RTB-0EB, so there's a different root table ID. It has an association state. This one is associated. we've only got one route this time, and it's a local route. So this route table does not involve a route to an internet gateway. But yeah, I'm serious. I don't know which subnet these are attached to. So perhaps that's why we also have. So that's not very. I don't like that command. Describe route tables. It tells me about the routes in each one, but it's kind of a bit vague. I don't know about the subnets, so maybe there's another one. We do have enable transit gateway route table propagation. That's not the right command. No. Export transit gateway routes. No. Get transit gateway route table associations. No. Is there something where I can look at the associations for, so association, let's bring it back to 1. So we've got accept transit gateway multicast domain. No. Create local gateway route table virtual interface group association. No. No. These are delete commands. Describe IAM instance profile associations. No. Describe IPAM resource discovery associations. No. Describe local gateway route table virtual interface group associations. Not sure that's right. Local gateway route table. This is for virtual interface groups. I'm not sure what virtual interface groups are. I'm not sure that's right. Or something to do with routes then. Route. Describe route tables. Replace route. Replace route table association. If I just go to the describe region, so where the commands beginning with describe are, I've got describe addresses, describe account attributes, describe capacity reservations, describe carrier gateways, describe classic link interfaces. Nothing though for describe NAT gateways. No. Am I missing something here? Am I missing something? So what I'm saying is, look, I've got this command. It's very interesting. You know, I've got one route table, which is a main route table. And I know it's got a route table ID. And I've got RTB021, bit more information about RTB021. It's got a destination CEDAR block. It's got a gateway ID local and a gateway ID internet gateway. And then I've got this other main main route table RTB0EB. So 2 route tables. Oh, okay. Well, one way you could tell what subnet it is the local route. So if you look at the gate, remember we talk about the target as it's always going to be a gateway. So we just say gateway ID, but this is the local route. So this is what in a table would say target local. So the gateway ID, the destination CEDAR block, I think this is right, is 172.31 0016. Okay, so if I just copy that object, 172.31.00. Now, do you recognize that? 172.31.00/16. Hopefully, that corresponds to one of our subnets. So if we go back to the command where we... Can I do Control F here? No. Talked about our subnets. So we've done describe VPCs. We've done create internet gateway. And here we go. We did describe subnets. And look, one of them has a seeder block of 107, but that's /20. 172.31.32/20. We've got 172.31.16/20. And okay, they're all /20, these subnets. That is disappointing, actually. I was hoping one of them would be / it would be this 172.31.00/16, but it's not, is it? They're all /20. I mean, we have got 172.31.00. So let's have a think. So this is the problem. So the problem is I can happily perform AWS EC2 and then was it describe route tables. Yep. However, the response does not tell me which subnet each route table is associated with, or I'm told, maybe I'm missing something here, but I'm told whether the route table is main or not, the route table ID, but I'm not told which subnet the route table belongs to. And ChatGPT says, well, you can find that information by looking at the associations field in the response. And they give an example where they do describe route tables, but they include -- query, route tables associations, subnet ID null, route table ID, subnet ID. This will list all route tables that are explicitly associated with subnets. Let me know if you need further refinements. Okay, so is the idea that the subnets which are not explicitly associated with a route table use the main route table? Is that it? Yes, exactly, yeah. So subnets that are not explicitly associated with a route table will automatically use what's called, it's almost a technical term, the main route table for the VPC. So when we say this is main true, that's really important. This route table is more important than the others, and it means any subnet is going to use it. They're all going to use this route table. They're all going to use this route table, which has these routes. So we have this local route, which is state active for this one as well, and this one is all zeros to the internet gateway. So this means that every subnet that we have has this route to the internet gateway. Okay, it has a local route for the VPC and a route to the internet gateway. So I think that's kind of alarming, isn't it? We don't want that means even if you've got a subnet you intend to be private, it's using the main route table. The main route table has a route to the internet gateway. So when I say, oh, this is going to be my public subnet, it's like, yeah, they're all going to be public. Because they're all using the main route table, and that's got a blimmin' route to the internet gateway in. But remember, an internet gateway means outbound access, but still. So the first thing I want to do, if we want to have an EC2 instance that has private connectivity, so we're going to have a private subnet, and remember we've got an EC2 instance running now, so I'm going to make, and it's in subnet 02C, so I'm going to say private subnet is going to be this 02C one. What you do is you basically put a NAT gateway and you position it in the public subnet, because some people think you put it in the private gateway because NAT gateways sort of achieve privacy, so they kind of think therefore we put it in the private subnet, but we don't. We actually put the NAT gateway in the public subnet. So let's see if there's a command to create a NAT gateway. That's the next sort of obvious step. So Control F, NAT. So we've got describe NAT gateways. Well, let's start with that. Let's see if we've got anything. Can we start? Not control. So control page down. Yeah, brings us to the end. So if you're scrolling up, don't scroll that control page down. So AWS EC2 describe NAT gateways, and enter. Okay, so it's come back with this object in curly brackets, which is good. It's nice to get some feedback. We've not got any NAT gateways. There's a command which is dissociate NAT gateway address. There's a command which is unassign private NAT gateway address. Create-nat-gateway. Let's have a look at that command, and we might sketch that out. So let's have a quick read. It creates a NAT gateway in the specified subnet. This action creates a network interface in the specified subnet with a private IP address from the IP address range of the subnet. You can create either a public NAT gateway or a private NAT gateway. With a public NAT gateway, internet-bound traffic from a private subnet can be routed to the NAT gateway so that instances in a private subnet can connect to the internet. Okay, so that makes sense. Public NAT gateway. With a private NAT gateway, private communication is routed across VPCs and on-premises networks through a transit gateway or virtual private gateway. Common use cases include running large workloads behind a small pool of allow-listed IPv4 addresses, preserving private IPv4 addresses, and communicating between overlapping networks. For more information, see NAT gateways in the Amazon VPC user guide. But that's the classic case. So the classic case is a public NAT gateway. Okay, we want resources in a private subnet to be able to sort of reach out to the internet. And let's be sensible and read this warning. When you create a public NAT gateway and assign it an EIP, or secondary elastic IPs, so they're called EIP, elastic IPs. They're elastic because they're portable, you can shift them around. Well, then the network border group of the EIPs must match the network border group of the availability zone that the public NAT gateway is in. If it's not the same, the NAT gateway will fail to launch. You can see the network border group for the subnet's availability zone by viewing the details of the subnet. Similarly, you can view the network border group of an EIP by viewing the details of the EIP address. For more information about network border groups and EIPs, see Allocate an Elastic IP Address in the Amazon VPC User Guide. Okay, well, we're not I don't think we're going to give a public IP to the NAT gateway, but I don't think it's going to be an elastic IP necessarily. But if we get to that, we'll have to think about it. There's got to be a matching to that physical availability zone. Something's got to match, right? You've got to look at the network border group of the AZ and make sure that the EIP has that property too. Good to keep in mind. So create NAT gateway. The only thing you have to provide is -- subnet ID. All the others are optional, that's why they're in square brackets. So you could provide an allocation ID, you could provide a client token. You could do, of course, -- dry run. You could provide a private IP address for the NAT gateway. Now, when we say -- allocation ID, it's the allocation ID of the elastic IP address to associate with the NAT gateway. Remember, elastic IPs are public. You cannot specify an elastic IP address with a private NAT gateway. If the elastic IP address is associated with another resource, you must first associate it. Okay. So when we say allocation ID, we're talking about allocating an elastic IP. So we're talking about EIPs there. Subnet ID, the ID of the subnet in which to create the NAT gateway. So we might say sketch that command out. So I'm going to do AWS-EC2 create NAT gateway, allocation ID. Well, I'm not going to give it an EIP yet. Or do I have to? Do I have to provide an EIP? I mean, I know it's in square brackets, but do I basically have to? Because where's the sort of parameter for just public IP? So maybe the only way you can attach an IP to your NAT gateway is by way of an EIP. Anyway, I certainly need to provide a subnet ID. Well, we situate this NAT gateway in my public subnet, so I'm going to give my public subnet ID there. Subnet ID, paste in. So in terms of sketching out the command, I'm going to do a dry run again. So this is what it looks like so far. Let me see. Let me think. Do we need to provide an elastic IP? As I said, we've got allocation ID for the EIP you're allocating to it, client token, dry run, subnet ID, tag specifications, connectivity types. We've got a parameter for a private IP address, -- private IP address. So here's some more information on that. -- private IP address. Well, you're going to provide a string here. You don't put an integer in. And it says it's the private IPv4 address to assign to the NAT gateway. If you don't provide an address, a private IPv4 address will be automatically assigned. So presumably this is the identifier for the NAT gateway that can be used by the things in your private subnet. Right, I know that the NAT gateway is a sort of man in the middle between the internet, which is public, and the private, but you still need a way for the private to say, excuse me, I've got a packet to send out. So we do need the NAT gateway to have a private IPv4 address. What about this -- connectivity type parameter? Well, it indicates whether the NAT gateway supports public or private connectivity. The default is public connectivity. As I said, it's a kind of classic case, so we don't need to worry about that. So the idea is you either just write as for the value private or public. So -- connectivity type space private or space public. But that's, I mean, given that we're learning, we may as well fill it out. So I'm going to put public. I'm not interested in, two VPCs talking where there's one VPC on premises and one not. That's not why we're using a NAT gateway. We're doing it for this classic case of going out onto the public address space. But it won't do any harm for me to say, okay, I'm using the connectivity type of public. But again, there's no parameter here that's to do with the public IP, or is there? So we've got secondary allocation IDs. We've got secondary private IP, secondary private IP address count, -- CLI input JSON, -- generate CLI skeleton, and then these are just global options, meaning they're options that apply to all commands, not just create-nat-gateway, and so none of them are going to be specific to this. So we've got -- debug, end -- endpoint URL. If you want to target your own an unusual URL with the command. So helpfully we're provided with an example, and we'll look at this next time because this video is getting a little bit too long. But we're on the case of NAT gateways.